There is a woman standing in my driveway right now. Not a stranger who got confused. Not someone who took a wrong turn. She is standing there with a clipboard, a yellow document, and the particular expression of someone who has already decided they have won. She points at my car and says, very calmly, "This vehicle needs to be removed by noon. You are in violation." I looked at her. I looked at my car. I looked at the house behind me, the house I had been living in and paying rent on for 3 years. Then I looked back at her and said, "Violation of what, exactly?" She smiled, tapped her clipboard, and said, "I think you'll find that this space no longer belongs to you." That was the moment I knew this was not going to end well. For her. Because by the end of that same week, my landlord had handed me 6 weeks of free rent. This woman had been reported to 3 separate authorities, the BMW parked behind her had been towed, and I was standing in my own driveway, the one that absolutely still belonged to me, drinking tea in the afternoon sun. But let me take you back to where this actually started. There is a woman standing in my driveway right now. Not a stranger who got confused. Not someone who took a wrong turn. She is standing there with a clipboard, a yellow document, and the particular expression of someone who has already decided they have won. She points at my car and says, very calmly, "This vehicle needs to be removed by noon. You are in violation." I looked at her. I looked at my car. I looked at the house behind me, the house I had been living in and paying rent on for 3 years. Then I looked back at her and said, "Violation of what, exactly?" She smiled, tapped her clipboard, and said, "I think you'll find that this space no longer belongs to you." That was the moment I knew this was not going to end well. For her. Because by the end of that same week, my landlord had handed me 6 weeks of free rent. This woman had been reported to 3 separate authorities, the BMW parked behind her had been towed, and I was standing in my own driveway, the one that absolutely still belonged to me, drinking tea in the afternoon sun. But let me take you back to where this actually started. By the 3rd week, strange cars were appearing almost daily. Red Volkswagen on a Thursday night that was still there when I came home at midnight. A white Ford that blocked my gate completely on a Saturday morning. A black Mercedes whose driver, when I knocked, held up one finger at me and went back to his phone call. I called Mr. Patel 4 times across 10 days. Same relaxed tone every time. Looking into it. Some confusion. Not to worry. Then my neighbor knocked on my door one evening with her phone in her hand, and a look on her face I didn't quite understand. She showed me an app. A parking rental app, the kind where property owners list their driveways for strangers to book by the hour or by the day. There, on her screen, was a photograph of my house. My driveway. My gate. £8 a day. 17 reviews. One review said, "And I want you to understand I am not inventing this. Convenient, well located, management very professional." Management. The listing had been live for 6 weeks. Mr. Patel had been quietly collecting money using the parking space I was renting, the space that was legally mine, without telling me, without asking me, without a single word. But here is what made this worse. Mr. Patel was not managing this alone. He had hired someone to run his properties for him. A letting agent. A woman named Mrs. Sandra Davies. And Mrs. Davies had been the one who set up the listing. Mrs. Davies had been the one approving the bookings. Mrs. Davies had been the one collecting the payments and forwarding them to Mr. Patel after taking her own cut. When I found this out, everything suddenly made sense. The professional tone of the listing. The quick responses to renters. The fact that it had been running like a small, quiet, organized little business for a month and a half. Mrs. Davies was running a side operation inside my rental contract. And she had done it without ever once considering that I might find out. I want to tell you exactly what I did next, because most people get this part wrong. The instinct is to go straight to anger. Call everyone. Say everything. Let the emotion do the talking. I felt that instinct. My hands were shaking when my neighbor showed me that listing. But anger without preparation is just noise. I didn't want noise. I wanted results. So I spent 2 hours building a file before I made a single call. Screenshots of the app listing with timestamps. Photos of every strange car with dates noted. A copy of my lease. Page 2. The words exclusive use underlined. 3 years of bank statements showing rent paid on time. Copies of every message I had sent Mr. Patel asking about the strange cars. Records of every vague reply he had sent back. Then I called a housing solicitor. What Mrs. Davies and Mr. Patel had done had a legal name. It was not just rude. It was not just unfair. It was a breach of contract. My lease granted me exclusive use of that space. Subletting it without my knowledge or consent and profiting from it directly was illegal. Mrs. Davies, as the acting agent, carried her own liability for setting the arrangement up and running it. The solicitor wrote 2 letters, one to Mr. Patel, one to Mrs. Davies directly. I know for a fact that Mrs. Davies received hers on a Thursday morning because she called me that same afternoon. Not to apologize. Not at first. She called to explain. She used words like arrangement and utilizing underused space and mutually beneficial situation. She spoke for 4 minutes in a calm, professional voice as though she was presenting a business proposal. I let her finish. Then I told her that the solicitor's letter had outlined 3 specific legal violations, that I had documented evidence of 6 weeks of unauthorized subletting, and that I intended to file a formal complaint with the property ombudsman by the end of the week unless I received written confirmation that the listing was down and a conversation about compensation had begun. Silence on the line. Then, very carefully, I'll need to speak with Mr. Patel. I told her she had until the following morning. The listing came down that night, but Mrs. Davies was not finished. This is where the story gets interesting. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. In person, clipboard in hand. Yellow document, which turned out to be a completely fabricated notice she had drafted herself, referencing no actual law, claiming that my tenancy terms had been amended and that I was now required to share the driveway. This woman had responded to a solicitor's letter by showing up at my house with fake paperwork. That was when she said those words. This space no longer belongs to you. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, would you like to read page 2 of my lease together? Or would you prefer I forward it to your professional body along with everything else I've already sent them? She opened her mouth, closed it. I had already filed the complaint with the property ombudsman the previous day. I had already sent a copy to the letting agency's head office. I had already left a detailed, factual, carefully worded review on every platform I could find that listed her agency. She didn't know any of this yet. I watched her figure it out in real time. The clipboard lowered slowly. The professional composure cracked just slightly at the edges. She said she would be in touch. She left. She was never in touch again. Not once. Mr. Patel called 2 days later. 6 weeks of free rent, confirmed in writing, transferred before the month was out. A formal apology letter. A new clause added to my lease confirming exclusive driveway use with no subletting permitted under any circumstance. Mrs. Davies' agency lost the management contract for Mr. Patel's properties. I found that out 3 months later through the same neighbor who had first shown me the app. Apparently, the head office had not been pleased about the ombudsman complaint or the reviews. And the BMW? He had a monthly subscription that wasn't canceled properly. He showed up the morning after Mrs. Davies' visit, pulled into my driveway like nothing had happened. I walked out with my tea, showed him the tow truck number, 1 tap away on my screen. He moved in 30 seconds. Some people need words. Some people need a solicitor's letter. Some people just need to watch you actually dial. Here is what I want you to take from this. Tenants have rights. Real, legal, enforceable rights. Your lease is a contract, and contracts go both ways. When someone takes what is yours, even someone with professional credentials, even someone with a clipboard and a blazer and a very confident voice, you are not powerless. Document from day one. Know your lease word for word. And when something feels wrong, do not wait for it to resolve itself. It will not. People like Mrs. Davies are counting on you to feel confused, feel small, feel like fighting back is more trouble than it's worth. It is not more trouble than it's worth. 6 weeks of free rent and a woman with a clipboard walking away from my door with no answers and no power. That was worth every single minute. But here is what I never told anyone. Mrs. Davies came back one more time after this. And what happened that day made everything before it look small. Subscribe so you don't miss that one.